Really excited to welcome today Lisa Toenniges, the founder and CEO of Innovative Learning Group. ILG is a firm that provides learning and performance solution services to Fortune 1000 companies. It was founded back in 2004. One of the coolest things I think that I saw in this young company was the fact that even in these sort of economic hard times, this company's revenues have more than doubled since they founded it. And that's saying something, especially right now. You may be familiar with some of Lisa's work prior to founding ILG. She worked with Triad Consulting Firm, which I'm going to guess some of you are familiar with and remember well. But I don't want to take more time than I need to. Please join me in welcoming Lisa. Thank you.
My background, I thought I would give you just a little context about my personal background and then a little bit about the company that will give you some context to help you ask a whole lot of questions and make this interactive, because I want to make this, especially holy smokes, on a Friday afternoon, the day after St. Patrick's Day. 70 degrees. I'm guessing it's starting to feel like a long week for many of us. So I actually started out as a music education major and got a degree in music education from Michigan State University. So I have that education foundation. And I went to work as a school teacher and actually was a band director for a couple of years in Tawas City, Michigan, and taught grades 6 through 12, and I was 21 and barely looked any older than the students did. And at some point I decided to make a little bit of an interesting career change, and I liked the teaching part but wasn't really sure I wanted to do that for my whole career. So made a career change and went to work for General Motors. So kind of downplayed all the music part of my resume and upplayed all the community relations and fundraising and interpersonal skills and that kind of thing. And the beautiful thing then, when I learned about business, which I'd never learned about as a music major, so in getting into General Motors, I learned about business, and then what I realized is that you could do the training, the corporate training thing in an organization on the business side of the world. And then I realized you could get a master's degree in this, so I got a master's degree in instructional technology from Wayne State University. So what I don't have, though, are the deep underpinnings that all of you have in psychology and behavioral analysis. I have learned quite a bit of that along the way and read books and from Dr. Ab King and Dave Snyder and my other colleagues from Western. I've learned enough, and it's fascinating, and I appreciate the real deep expertise that you all have in that. And I think it will serve you well, kind of regardless of what path you take. So anyways, I left General Motors after about 7 years. So I would say, when I was at General Motors, I had I was in some sales assignments, learned how to be a district manager, so completely different focus than what we're all doing here. But then at some point I was able to get into the training part and trained district managers. So what I would say is then I was like an internal consultant, okay? If you think about a job where you work for an organization and you're internal, helping improve that organization is one opportunity here in a few minutes as we talk about career opportunities. I then made kind of the switch and thought, when you're internal, often I administered vendors doing the work. And I thought, I think I'd like to be on the other side more doing the work. So I flipped over onto the vendor side and I worked for a year at an advertising agency doing training for Chrysler. And then I left that firm after just a year and went to Triad Performance Technologies, which was kind of in its heyday one of the premier performance consulting and training firms, and with a national reputation. So unfortunately, Triad went out of business. One of the many times here recently that the economy was bad. I think the economy probably started getting bad back around 2000, 2001. Did you all pay attention to the economy then, or not really? Not really. I was telling the folks at lunch, I was in college during the recession of 1980, and I don't think I understood that at all as a college student. So the economy, started getting bad in 2000, 2001, and unfortunately Triad closed its doors. 2004, Triad closed its doors. And so they told us on a Wednesday we would be laid off on a Friday. And on one hand, it wasn't a surprise. They were very open and very honest about how we were doing as a company. So at that point in time, it was, need a job. Should I start a company? Should I update my resume? So for whatever reason, starting a company seemed like the easier path. We talked about kind of the whole startup thing at lunch today. And so here we are. We just got kind of past our 7-year milestone. So it's very gratifying to be at this point. We're talking about one of the things that's important is certification. Are there certifications? Do you all have certifications or think about getting certifications? What's an example? You're nodding. Sorry to call on you.
ECBA.
A what?
ECBA.
Okay. And do others of you have that or aspire to that? Okay, that's pretty common. So what I have is called a CPT, a Certified Performance Technologist, which is endorsed by another acronym, ISPI, the International Society for Performance Improvement. And so I think that's one good opportunity for those of you interested in performance improvement as a professional organization in here. And we're going to talk some about that, the importance of getting out and about and doing more than just your studies. So meeting people and joining some professional organizations and getting some experience and how helpful that's going to be. But I actually started getting involved with ISPI during grad school. So for me in the late 80s. And really have been pretty consistently involved all along. You know, you go to a meeting, and then pretty soon, like within one meeting, right, they tag you to be on a committee. And then if you stay awake in the first committee meeting, pretty soon you can be the chair. The third meeting, you become the chair, and pretty soon you're on the board. So I've kind of come up through the ranks here in Michigan and was, as the president role, you do president-elect and president and past president, so it's kind of a 3-year opportunity. And then I was able to roll right in and manage the international conference, run the international conference last year, and then get elected to the international board. So I'm a director and treasurer. So that's a whole, being on a board is quite a thing. If you'd ever like to talk about what it's like to be on a board, it's fascinating, just fascinating. So that's a little bit about me. So, all right, so we do custom training and performance support. So what does that look like? As far as services, what that looks like to us, or we go into organizations and do learning strategies. So we figure out, you know, if you were in a company, you might have a marketing strategy, you might have an IT strategy, you might have an advertising strategy. So we go in, I don't know if you're familiar, there's an organization over here called National Heritage Academies, a charter school organization. So we're doing a learning strategy for them right now to help them figure out their vision for learning and governance and how they're going to be structured and how they're going to make or buy learning and performance support and how they're going to be structured as a function around learning, and then their business processes and tools and standards around learning. So that's a service. We do lots of curriculum architecture. You know what that is? It's like what you're going through now, right now. Psychology 101, 201, 301, where you map out the chunks. Do you use that word, chunks? It's a very formal term. Chunks of learning. Don't you think it's better than interventions? Interventions is a little geeky. We do lots of work through the whole Addie model. Analysis, design, development. Not so much implementation. We do lots of train the trainers, but usually our clients are the ones doing the training if it's classroom. We have a network of people, but we don't do a lot of that. And we do quite a bit of evaluation work. So with the design and development, we work across all the delivery methods, we call them. There's some companies that kind of specialize in a given delivery method, but we do classroom, we do e-learning, we do web conferencing, we do print self-study, we do podcasts and videos. And now it's very exciting, we're moving in, we're looking at more and more with mobile. And mobile, if you think about it, you know, it's okay for learning, but what it's great for is performance support. Think about this tool that you have with you all the time. It knows where you are, you know, knows what you're doing, right? Some of the languages it's talking about, it's a prothesis. It's right there. It's part of you as a tool to help you learn and perform better. So I think we're pretty excited about some of the mobile opportunities. So from a service offering, that's what we do, and it's very similar to what Triad did. Very similar to what Triad did. So I think it becomes more the business model and the economy. Triad was on a path to grow, to do that kind of thing where you double in size every 3 years. And when you're on a path to do that, you make investments to grow. And generally you go in debt to grow. And so then when all of a sudden, you know, the wool kind of gets pulled, the rug gets, sorry. I should try not to use those expressions because I never do them right. When the rug gets pulled out from under you, you know, you're on one plan and all of a sudden the scenario changes. It's tough to change course. So they were on a path to grow. We'd ramped up. We'd made investments. And Triad had gotten as big as 80 people. And if it's meaningful to you, Triad was about $11 million in revenue, if you have any perspective for what that means. So 80 people. We had 4 offices in 4 cities and 80 people. And we went through about 3 years of cutting, laying off people until we were down to about 20 people, which is about the same size when I joined the firm. So I was there about 10 years, and so in 10 years we went from 16 to 80 and back to 16, which is a little gut-wrenching because it was a wonderful company and a wonderful culture. So it was, you make the best decisions always that you can. But I think it was as much the debt and a little bit when you grow, we grew and we opened 4 offices. So we had physical offices. And what does that mean? Overhead. Yeah, thank you very much from a business.
Did you own them? Did Triad own them?
No, we leased them. But you know what the problem is, right? What happens when you lease?
You tied to a contract.
Yeah, you have a contract, right? Just like when you have an apartment contract. Yep, and then you can't get out of them, or you have to pay money to get out of them, or those kind of things. So I think that was part of the problem. So when we started out, we started as a fresh, yes sir?
To what extent is the impetus for growth the idea of trying to make more money?
There,
Greed, in other words.
Well, that's certainly one way to look at it. We actually talked about it at Triad when we were growing. And we have a staff now of 10 of us, me and 9 other people, and we talk about growth. And we talk about, number one, do we want to grow at all? And if we want to grow, how much do we want to grow? And how fast do we want to grow? So, you can let that just kind of happen to you, just like you do with your career. I see lots of people that kind of just let their career happen to them. And they wait till they stumble upon something or somebody calls them and plucks them or tags them. And I see other people that are a lot more thoughtful and proactive about it. So what are other reasons why you might want to grow besides greed?
To reach a larger market?
To reach a different market, right? There are some, as a 10-person company, there are some firms that might look at us and say, oh, you're too small. You're too small, we can't work with somebody that's too small. On the flip side, we have other clients that are quite happy to work with a small firm because they know they'll be a big fish to us and they'll get a lot of our attention. So you can look at it both ways. So right, to reach different, to get a foot in the hole, hold at a different kind of size company. What else?
Kind of protect yourself and you don't have cash flow going.
So maybe a little more fortitude. We're a little bigger, we're a little stronger. You're less likely to get blown over in the earthquake. What else might you grow?
You can add capabilities.
Yes, you can add more. You could maybe have a whole different division, a whole different part of the company. One of the things Triad tried to do, and partly which wasn't that successful, is they tried to have split training and performance consulting, and it gets tricky. It gets tricky. You have 2 hiring models and 2 compensation models and 2 sets of salespeople and 2 sets of business processes. So it gets a little tricky if you understand that. Why else do you want to grow? I got one key thing I'm thinking of.
Service more clients.
So you can service more. Yep. If you grow, you can do more. You don't have to maybe turn people down. If you have so much work coming in the door, wow, that sounds great. After going through the recession, that sounds terrific. as you grow, you create more opportunities for your staff, right? Because you have more people that can take on more leadership responsibilities. They can, as they grow, they can manage people. As they grow, they can manage bigger projects. They can start to manage whole accounts. They can manage a whole department. So you create more opportunities for people to grow and move up and do different things. So that can be the reason also. And it's interesting. To me, it's fascinating to think about growth. But when I think about growth, for me, growth is about growing steadily and profitably. So I think it's kind of the same thing with a career, right? You don't want to kind of grow too fast, too quick, and get in over your head. So it's more, and I don't want to grow chaotically. I don't have any desire to just grow, out of control, and the staff feels like they're out of control all the time, because eventually the clients are going to feel a little bit like that too. So we have 10 of us on staff. What we talk about as a differentiator, which kind of ties into why we were able to make a go of it. We look at what differentiates us. Number one is our focus on performance, because there's an awful lot of companies that do what we do, that all they talk about is, the training, like the training is the end game. And is training the end game? What do we really care about? Right, that the performance gets better and that we improve the business results. So that's one differentiator. And the other one is what seems to me is a really simple one, but apparently it's really hard, is the responsiveness. We get feedback over and over that we're so responsive. You returned our call. You did what you said you were going to do. You let us know that you weren't going to get it back to us today, but you were going to get back to us tomorrow. Does that seem hard? Do you do that in your daily interactions with class? Okay, well, if you don't get an email response from Dr. Malat, we'll understand why. But what do you do if you get an email and you don't really have time right now to respond thoughtfully to it? What do you do?
Tell the people you'll respond soon.
Absolutely, Hannah. Yeah, you respond and say, I'm sorry, I'm really busy right now, and I'll respond in 3 days, right? That took you 20 seconds. Are you ever too busy to do that 20-second task? Anyways, so we have people that will call us on a sales call, trying to call us about new work. And they'll say, wow, we called this other vendor and we didn't hear back from them for 2 weeks. Now, does that make any sense? So anyways, for us, we don't think that's hard, but we're very responsive. We get back with people, we do what we say we're going to do, what we promise. So I think that's one of the things that differentiates us. We are a woman business enterprise, so that means we're certified as a women business. So to me, it's not generally something I like to call out, but there are companies that's important to them. There are RFPs where we'll get where they want to know if we have that certification, and they want us to show that certification. And my understanding is that it helps us because they have the need to have those kind of numbers and quotas and things like that.
What are the criteria for that certification?
The criteria is that you're female.
You don't qualify, right?
So hold on. Actually, I just got recertified, and they came to the office. They did a site visit. So when I first got certified 3 years ago, they did a site visit. And so I don't know why. I guess every 3 years now they do a site visit. And so right as I was leaving the door, I was telling my husband they were coming for a visit, and he said kind of the same thing, like, what are they going to do? What are they going to test for? But so, what the main criteria is, they really want to see that a female really runs the business.
So it's the CEO.
Yes.
Not every single person in the company.
No. You have to have
your husband building desks didn't disqualify you.
Right. want to know that you have 51% ownership and that you really run the company.
Okay.
So when they
That's
came
my
for the
question.
site visit, what they really wanted to, the kind of questions they asked me and the things as we toured around the space, what they really wanted to understand is if I really ran the company and I really understood what was happening at the company. So anyways, we have that certification and believe it's helpful sometimes to us. And we've won some very nice awards. We just found out we're winning an ISPI award at the conference this April for a human performance solution that we did for Amway right here in your backyard. So we're very, very pleased and proud of that. And it was for kind of work you'll all recognize. It was for some impact mapping and performance modeling and curriculum architecture work we did globally for their distributors. And, there's like 3 million of them. So it's very, you think about your target audience, right? It's fascinating. Okay, so that's a little bit about my background, a little bit about Innovative Learning Group. I thought the other thing is just a little bit about how I spend my day as an owner. So I spend about half of my day doing marketing and sales kind of things, and I spend probably about 10% of my time actually doing billable work, where I play a role. I'm, the project manager on a learning or performance support project or something. And then I probably spend the other half, worrying about IT and facilities and HR and hiring people and that kind of thing. I had 2 topics, and you tell me what's of most interest to you, because I can be really flexible. I thought on one hand we could talk a little bit about life as a consultant, I called it, which is much about, I think, careers and jobs and that kind of thing. And another thing I thought we could talk about was kind of the business side of HPT and ISD and things to worry about. Anyone, shall we do a multi-vote here? Or does somebody that have the trump card? Which one is more important? Kind of life as a consultant or the business side? Okay, raised hands. Life as a consultant? Okay, the business side? Shall we go with the majority rules? Or we can do a little of both. So, if you think about possible jobs, I'm guessing most of you, some of you are thinking about that at some point? How many? All right. So if you think about it, we said, you could work internally, so you can work inside an organization. You can work externally at a vendor kind of organization like ours. And I think another option is you can be a freelancer or a contractor. So what do you think are kind of the pros and cons of each? What do you think the pros are about being internal?
Stability, security.
Security, stability, big benefits. Those are kind of the cliche things you hear about, a big one. Maybe you stay with the organization long enough that you can see all the changes. If you stay for 10 or 20 years, you're seeing all the initiatives play out. What about being on the vendor side, do you think?
Flexibility.
Flexibility, maybe?
I wonder about being internal, if it increases the likelihood that you're actually going to get something accomplished.
Do you think it increases or decreases?
Increases. In other words, if you're an external consultant, the path to hell is paved with great workshops and so forth that never get implemented.
I think it depends, because I've seen both be real successful. Certainly the logic, if you're in there internally and you know the culture and you know the inner workings and you're there for the long haul, not just till the contract runs out, theoretically that would help you be able to make a difference. There's certainly times, though, where I think once you're internal, no one respects you anymore. And there's some aura, about being the person coming in from the outside that, for whatever reason, in some situations gives you this credibility that, if you were the same person internal, no one would listen to you, but all of a sudden you're the consultant coming in from the outside and people do listen to you. So I think it just depends on the situation you're in and how well you do the engagement. Okay, and what do you think the benefits are of being a freelancer?
Time flexibility.
Time flexibility, you can work when you want, not when you want.
You work with who you want.
You can work with who you want. I think that's another thing about being a vendor is, I mentioned that broad look at the industries we work across, and one day You know, we're working with a plant grower, and then another day we're working with a chemical manufacturer, and another day we're working in healthcare. So it can be very interesting, you know, if you like that variety. I think the other thing then is you think about, kind of another construct to think about, is do you want to be a generalist, or are you interested in being a specialist? And then some other words I used earlier in the day about that, you know, do you want breadth? And I think breadth goes along with being a generalist, or do you want more the depth, which I think goes along with being a specialist? And I think you can do great either way. And what we talked about is some of it's just knowing a little bit more about yourself and what makes you tick. You know, do you like just taking a deep dive and you just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper, right, into a field, or do you get kind of, had enough of that, I'm really kind of ready to move over here and try that. In general, this is a very general statement, but in general I see people internally being more generalists. And I see, again, as a broad stereotype, I see people kind of on the vendor side being more specialist. And I think as a freelancer being more specialist. I don't know if your experience would resonate or hold that to be true. All right, so a couple constructs here, right? Internal, external, freelance, generalist, specialist. So the perspective that I can bring, you know, I shared my background. I don't have the deep psychology background. So I can't really share the career path for all of you that would be more, we call it a clinical path or kind of a social work path. I can't share as much of that. What I can share more of is the path more as a performance consultant and more in the training and the performance support field. So if we talk just a minute about roles, you know, you can play the role of a performance consultant. How do you think you're spending your day if you're playing the role of a performance consultant? Those of you that have done some practicums and whatnot, what are the kind of tasks you're doing? How are you spending your day?
Marketing. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Marketing your services to people.
Okay, so you're trying to get some work. Absolutely, yep, and that's going to be important across all. What are the kind of tasks you're doing? You're observing people, you're interviewing people, you're studying data, you're doing lots of analysis, right? You're creating solutions, you're implementing your solutions, you're evaluating your solutions. Pretty analytical work, okay? So that's one role. You can certainly play the role of a project manager. Mike was saying that was one of the jobs, or one of the jobs he's seeing a lot of, are people that can manage kind of performance improvement kind of interventions and get them done. So that's a key role for us at our firm, is the person that can manage the project. And for us, they have the key client interface, so the key relationship, and they manage the day-to-day work, and they oversee the team, and basically they're worrying about quality and schedule and budget of the project. So that's a role you can play. You can play the role of an instructional designer. So, you know, deep expertise in adult learning theory and instructional strategies. You can play the role, for us, we do a lot of online kind of training now, digital. So programmers and graphic designers, probably that's, with degrees like you have, that's probably not the area that you would go in, but are certainly important roles in the field. I think often too, you know, I think it's important as you think about a career to think about what makes you tick all day, every day. You know, do you like to be by yourself out in the woods? Do you like to be, you know, at a cube with beige walls and 2,000 other people around you? Do you like to sit by yourself at a computer? Do you like to be out and about and on the go and in this meeting and on this phone and rushing and return this email and write this document and call back this client? Do you see how those are very different ways to spend your day? And you could do both those things based on your backgrounds and your education. So I think it's pretty important to think about just how you like to spend your day and what kind of, I always say, what energizes you. You know, if you think about a given day and at the end of the day you're just like, oh, that was tough. Oh, I didn't like that at all. Oh, I'm so boring or so tedious. You know, don't engineer a role or career for yourself that feels that way. Pick the one where after you try it in a practicum or some volunteer kind of work, you get home, it's like, wow, it feels like it's only 8 o'clock. That was so cool. I was so energized by doing that. Those are the kind of things you want to kind of, you know, those words in your head that you want to listen to. And let that kind of guide you where you go with your career. The one thing I think, too, to think about, and I see it really helps people be successful or not successful, and, you know, happy, not happy, and I know that's not very behavioral, but is pace. How fast do you like to go? Are you a process thinker? If I ask you a question, you'd rather have 15 minutes until we talk about it? Or do you want to be going like this? And then I think you want to be in a place from a work standpoint that matches that pace. Because if you're out of sync, if you're not congruent with that, you're going to be miserable. One way or the other. If the organization is going too slow and too methodical, and you're impatient all the time, you're going to be miserable. And if on the flip side, your organization is going 90 miles an hour faster than you, you're going to feel like you're on a treadmill and someone keeps turning up the dial and you can't keep up. So I think it's really important, again, to do that kind of self-reflection and see what's going to maybe be a better fit.
Don't you think that a lot of people have not had enough experience to check out which of those things are best for them? Mm-hmm. Their life experience as a student, for example, is often passive and doing what the instructor says, maybe an occasional project or something. Now, for them to try to decide which style they want, they've never had several of the other styles. So it'd be a good idea to sample a bunch before they try to make a decision.
And look at, you know, I'm guessing many of you have had some experiences being in clubs or music organizations or sports teams, right? Where you got some sense of, boy, do I like a day where I have 2 classes and then all the time in between to reflect and think and, you know, work on my paper. And I really want, you know, I could probably do this paper in 4 hours, but I'd really rather spend 40 on it. And really, all right, but that's a whole different feeling, right, from the person that goes to the gym and they get to their first class and then they're doing an internship and then they're on this club and then they're doing intramural volleyball, right? I mean, I think even that tells you a little bit about yourself and the speed you like to go at. And when you most feel like you're going the same speed as that train next to you, you know, not faster, not slower. But I think that's a good point. And I think if you get into one and it doesn't feel right, try to reflect on, you know, that first job just doesn't feel right. Try to reflect on why that doesn't feel right, and it might be why. There's something out of whack. And it's probably something about, you know, the environment. It may not be about the skill you're using. So don't switch careers too quickly. Maybe just try to apply that skill in a different place. So I was thinking I might just talk a little bit about some of the pros and cons about our profession. And I'm happy to report the pros list is this long and the cons list is only this long. So I had things like, you know, the ultimate thing, we're helping to improve the quality of people's lives, right? Because if they can perform better and get to where they want to be in their life, you've helped them and improved the quality of their life and probably the people around them in their life. So that's pretty cool. I think generally you find we're in a field that's pretty nurturing and caring. You know, you're trying to help people. So that's a pretty compelling part about the field. I think we said a few minutes ago, this is really a great foundation for so many things, regardless of where you end up. This background, I mean, we were saying it would make you a great manager at Best Buy. Just having this understanding of behavior makes you a great parent, right? You understand behavior. So lots of ways to use this as just a fabulous foundation to springboard from. I think it can be a nice mix of kind of the business side along with the helping profession. If that's something you're interested in, it's kind of a nice way to blend the both. I think it's also that same idea. It's a nice way to blend the research with application. You know, that's kind of a whole continuum. So where do you want to be on that continuum? You can kind of choose. It's a nice way to, especially, I think about instructional design, it's a great way you can be really analytical and very creative. Can you see? Because parts of instructional design are very, very analytical. Analyzing the performance you want, how to write the learning objective, and how to structure the exercise so it aligns with the learning objective. But where's the creativity part come in? What do you think?
The look of the instruction.
The look, certainly, right? If you've seen the web-based, the e-learning these days, right? The look can be high-end creativity. The whole thing can be a big simulation. It can be a big game. It can be a big collect points. It can be a big fill in the flower. Every time you get a point, the flower thing, and at the end you get a whole garden. It can be a whole car race or a scavenger hunt or a journey. And as interesting as you might find it, clients absolutely want that kind of thing. So, it's a nice way to mix kind of making it creative and fun and engaging. Not as far as entertaining. I don't think that's my main concern. But also the analytical part, so that you really have worried about that line of sight, so it really does improve performance. We talked about never getting bored. It's a great profession to use the latest technology, like I talked about. Whether that's not the foundation. We compete very well when we're competing against a company that's all about just the technology and the coding. We compete really well against them because to us, it's never about the technology. That's just a tool, that's just a support thing. But you can do both, is what I'm saying is the cool thing about our profession. You can worry about the improving performance and do it using the latest technology. You can make a living. You can make a very nice living if that's appealing and something you need to worry about. And then I had two that are kind of the segue between the pros and the cons. So as a pro, I had that you can travel, and it can be very deadline driven. And so sometimes being very deadline driven is very motivating and very exciting and very engaging because you have that goal. Something really meaningful is happening. That product is launching. That new system is getting implemented, and that can be very exciting, and to have a handful of those in your career is very exciting. And travel can be very exciting, right? And as you segue right into the cons of the profession, right? What can be a con of the profession? Travel. And deadlines, right? What do you guys think might be the biggest kind of challenging part about this field?
Is there a degree of uncertainty involved in it?
There's certainly a degree of uncertainty, because, right, do you try something and how will it turn out?
Well, and just with getting new clients and that kind of thing.
Yeah, if you're on the external side and you have to get new clients. But I always like to have everybody think about having customers. So regardless of what kind of organization you work in, regardless if you're external or internal, I like to think that you have customers. So the reality is you don't always get to do the solution that may be the best solution, right? You've gone in and you've done all your great analysis and you think you've absolutely picked the best solution that's going to really move the needle on performance. But you don't always get to do that. And so sometimes that can be a tad frustrating. Have any of you had any of that experience with some of your work experience or your practicums, that kind of thing, or your clinical experience? Yeah. So what do?
Do the best you can do to meet their needs, but do what you want at the same time.
Yep.
You just have
cry.
to.
You give up and cry? Yeah. Well, maybe for a minute or two. Yeah, but I think, what we always talk about is try to meet the customer where they are and get in and go side by side and hold hands together and work on the project. And along the way, your ideas are going to rub off and spill over, and you're going to earn. You can't make, right? You can't make somebody like you. You can't make somebody respect you. You have to earn that. So hopefully if you kind of try to understand where they are and why they want to do that solution and hold hands and start going, along the way you have the opportunity to make a difference. In each subsequent process or intervention, you can make a little bit more difference. So that's pretty cool. And sometimes it kind of goes hand in hand. Sometimes you just don't always have the money and the time to do the solution, quite the way you really like to do it. So again, it's all about kind of being resourceful and doing the best you can there. So I think those are some of the pros and cons. And did you see how the pros far outweigh it? Yes, Dr. Peterson.
I was going to say that I do consulting in schools a lot. And
Good.
some of the big frustrations I think that I encounter are, no matter what school I go to, it's like the same problems everywhere, and you start feeling like you're beating your head against the wall. And sometimes we find that they ask us to come in and consult about this, but when we start looking into it, the problem is so deep in the organization. So I was curious if you've ever encountered a situation where they ask you to consult on this, but you go, okay, your problems are like systemic here, and it's a little bit overwhelming to try to figure out where to start and how you sort of tackle that.
Yeah, and I think, to some extent, we can all feel that way kind of as we go through life every day, right? Right? There's lots of challenges in the world. I think we each have to think which piece of this can we do. But I think it's the same thing. I think you start with the piece they want. Unless the piece they want, is unethical. I think you start with the piece they want, and it's that same concept. Get in, and then we've actually taken the Addie model, because that's the space we often play in, and we've outlined probably 100 things you can do during the Addie model to improve performance, to be observant of things, to make recommendations, to throw in a couple ideas. We talk about how to infuse performance, into the training process, and we talk about whispering in the client's ear. And we're trying to whisper in the client's ear at every opportunity we can. Oh, did you think about adding that job aid? Oh, did you think about we get the managers before the training to talk about set expectations? Oh, did you think about, let's make it clear that the salespeople understand their compensation about the new product, because they're not going to sell it if they don't understand their new compensation. And again, it has nothing to do maybe with that solution we're talking about right then, but we keep trying to whisper. And so each time we can do a little bit better and make a little bit better difference. And if we all do that collectively, the world will be a better place.
I think
it's 5 o'clock on a Friday.
Yeah, on that. I think we have to add, we're at 5:01, and I know that this group gets a little antsy when we start hitting 5 after. So if you will join me in thanking